The Dark Side of Radium. Marie Curie, born in Warsaw, Poland in 1867 to a physics teacher. She received degrees in physical sciences and math with high honors from the Sorbonne in Paris. For her doctoral thesis, she studied uranium, discovering radioactivity and coining that phrase. During that time, she also met a French physicist and chemist named Pierre Curie, who she would marry and become a world-famous scientific couple. In 1903, a year after discovering radium, they shared with Henri Becquerel the Nobel Prize in Physics for the study of radioactivity. Marie was the first woman to ever win this award. In 1910, she was able to isolate pure metallic radium, and in 1911 was the sole winner of the Nobel in chemistry, becoming the first person to win 2 Nobels. She applied her radiation studies to medical uses such as the X-ray. Tragically, the failure here is that due to her decades of being around these radioactive substances, she developed health issues, including leukemia, and died in 1934. Unfortunately, upon the discovery of radium, without knowing its harmful effects, its use became wildly popular in many areas. It was used in medical treatments for cancer, impotence, blood pressure, ironically hair loss, and more. They had radon spas, luminous watches and paint, as well as toothpaste. Makeup and beauty products. It was put in water dispensers, food and clothing items, and more, all under the idea that its rays were actually good for the body. Radior and Thoradia were a couple of the big manufacturers of radium beauty supplies, including various creams, powders, soaps, toothpaste, and even a chin strap guaranteed to contain radioactive material that's rays would act upon muscles and nerves to erase wrinkles. Fortunately for the U.S., most work with radium was done in France, where it was discovered, so it was nowhere near as popular, at least as far as the beauty industry was concerned. Unfortunately for the U.S., we did use radium paint for the luminous watches in factories, and thus we had the Radium Girls. The U.S. Radium Corporation employed about 70 women to do various tasks handling the radium, with no protection, despite the chemists using protective gear. Around another 4,000 women between the US and Canada were employed to paint the luminous watch faces, where they mixed their own undark radium paint and were encouraged to keep the points of their brushes with their lips or tongue, thereby ingesting small amounts every time they did so. Unaware of the dangers, the girls would then also paint their teeth, nails, or faces for fun. Many became sick, the radiation burrowing holes through their bones, ulcers, tooth loss, even jaw loss. And by 1927, 30 had died from radiation exposure. Some say their bodies may still glow in their graves. Reports on the dangers of radium were ignored, as radium products had become so popular. The scientists knew the dangers, but along with many medical personnel that regularly recommended products, they were then part of a giant cover-up, although Marie Curie herself tried to warn people. Eventually, the radium companies were sued, which was a factor in the establishment of the Occupational Disease Labor Law, but settled claims for the workers out of court to avoid bad press. The girls were not the only ones to suffer for radium. Eben Byers was a rather athletic fellow, but when he broke his arm falling out of bed on a train, he was prescribed Radiathor, an energy drink made of water with radium dissolved in it. This was a creation of William J.A. Bailey, a Harvard dropout that claimed to be a doctor and offered kickbacks to those that prescribed it. For a while, Eben was a sort of spokesperson for the product, drinking several of the tonics a day, until the inevitable effects caught up with him, causing illness and the loss of most of his jaw. His death, due to having a higher social profile than the Radium girls, finally managed to make an impact on the public about the dangers of radium products, and in 1938 the FDA outlawed putting false claims on products such as radium products had advertised. So many fails along the path to the dark side of radium.